and welcome to Usability Science's September webinar presentation on best practices for forms. Forms are often the most interactive piece on a website. You can have users enter personal information in order to register at your site or fill out shipping information if they are making an order. The act of typing into a field is much more interactive than just clicking a link to go on to a next page at a site. And for that reason, forms are very important when it comes to usability, because you want to make sure people can understand the information that you're asking for from them and be able to give you that information easily. One thing to keep into consideration is the labels of the fields. Sometimes labels are placed on the form in a way that makes it difficult for users to know which fields go with what label. Here's an example from Southwest Airlines. You can see that they do label each field, but they place their label below the field. So the user has to, they see the field space, then they have to look below there to see the field label. This is great if it's really short, if you're only asking people maybe 3 or 4 items to give you information for. But if your form is a long form, it requires scrolling down the page. Once you get down to the bottom of the page, say here for company name, you're not sure if it goes with this field or if it goes with the field below it, because it's just not clear enough. Additionally, they put lines here, kind of like an accountant's ledger, to help separate these fields on the page. But unfortunately, what that causes is it just makes it look much more busier than this form page has to look. Often labels use unfamiliar terms. We had a test a while back where there was an address line and then there was an address continued label for the next field. People were not sure what part of the address was supposed to go in the address continued field because it wasn't clear to them. It was something, the term was unfamiliar to them. Easy solution is put the labels in a place where they align with the field that they correspond to. Here's an example from Spark People. You've got your fields here, and then you've got your field label right to the left, which is great because for English reading people, we read from left to right. So you'll read the email address label, you see the example down here, and then you can fill it out easily here in the field. Also, any labels that you use should be descriptive, but also make sure that they're clear and concise. The second thing you should take into consideration when using forms on your website is to group items logically. Sometimes fields are not grouped together. So if you have an address, group of address information, name, address, city, state, zip code, sometimes the zip code gets pulled away for other information. Maybe you need that to calculate the tax, so it's away from the rest of the shipping information, and users will get hung up. They'll ask me, where's the zip code? Why can't, I need to put it in here with everything else. Do I include it with the city name? They're just not sure when things are not grouped logically. Easy solution is to put information together that is similar. Here's an example from Express. They've got billing address here, it's labeled, which is great, and they've got every bit of information that will be needed to ensure that you have the correct billing address, and it's all grouped together. They've used headers to separate each section out on the form. Their form is all on one page. You have to scroll down to get to each different part of it. But what I like that they do is they give you a number here so that you know how many steps are involved, and they give you a really nice, clear, concise label for each section. And they also use horizontal lines to kind of visually break up all the options on the form, along with some space. Number 3, make sure that your users know what is required on the form, what the form is requiring of them. Often I've seen where the required fields are just not indicated. Users get really frustrated when they fill out a form to their satisfaction only to hit the submit button and then have the same form returned to them with all of the errors marked on the page. I've seen it where users don't know what the field requirements are, especially when it comes to usernames and passwords. So here's an example from one site that the password must contain 6 to 20 characters, at least one must be a number. If you don't inform users of this, users still don't know how complicated the password has to be. They're going to try the most easiest thing first, and if that doesn't work, they're going to expect some instruction on how to make it work. How complex does it need to be? Often these requirements are not located near the form field that they go with. Sometimes I've seen it at the top in a paragraph, an introductory paragraph. People are going to overlook that introductory paragraph. They're there to fill out the form. And then sometimes the requirements are just missing from the page. They're just not there, and there's no way to find them from that page either. Easy solution is one, to mark required fields with a red asterisk. That's very much a convention now. People definitely recognize it when I run usability tests that involve filling out forms. They definitely recognize that any field that has the red asterisk next to it is a required field, and they have to enter information in that in order to continue. Another option is to use instant form validation. But Twitter did this rather well. Their sign up form is very short. You just need full name, username, password, email, and then the human, I am a human, not a robot section. But what happens is, as you type your password and you make it more complex, you add capital letters and symbols and numbers, this field over here goes from weak to strong. So you know, as soon as it hits strong, you can stop entering a password. So this instant form validation really does cut down on all of this kind of wordy password has to be this, and then it has to do this, and it's got to jump up and down, and all of those other requirements. And last but not least, put the requirements next to the form field that it goes with. So if you don't use the form validation, if your business model doesn't support this, make sure that you display the requirements next to the form field. So for the password must contain, that better be next to the password field for people to be able to read it and associate it with that field. Number 4, the right field for the right task. Radio buttons and checkboxes, I've seen them being used incorrectly. I've also seen where users are restricted to a small number of characters in a field, but they're not informed of this. And this sometimes happens when people get to the point that they want to write a comment, or they want to, they've been able to email the site about something within the site. There's a form on the site that will send the email to either the webmaster or customer service, and they're restricted to the number of characters, but they don't know that. So then suddenly when they get to the end of the characters, they're in the middle of a sentence, and now they're going to have to delete everything that they wrote and come up with it in like 140 characters or less. It's very frustrating to users. Solution. General rule of thumb when it comes to radio buttons, they're only use those when there is one choice to be made. So here's an example from the body shop where they talk about the shipping method. They use radio buttons to denote the shipping method, and I don't believe they're automatically selected either. I think I clicked on this one to show you what the radio button looked like. You can only pick one of these. You can have ground, 2-day, or overnight. You cannot have all 3 or 2 of them, and you have to have one of them. So that's a great use of radio buttons. For checkboxes, you can use those when you have more than one option to be chosen. So if it's a gift, you can choose gift wrap and to add a message, or you can just choose gift wrap, or you can just add a gift message. You don't have to choose both of them, and you don't have to choose one of these at all. Also, ensure users are able to use the given field to enter all of the required information. You can do this on the back end, or you can make sure that visually the field size matches how many characters they are allowed to enter. Now here's an exception. This message, 80 characters maximum, this is for the gift card. They can only enter 80 characters. This field is bigger than that 80 characters, but what they're allowing for is you to hit return and maybe say thank you or sincerely or love and then your name. So it's giving you more vertical space than necessarily horizontal space here. But even though that this field is bigger than 80 characters, they're letting you know up front, they're letting the user know that it's only 80 characters that you can enter here, and that sets up the user expectation so they're not as frustrated when they get to the end of, say, birth instead of birthday, because they've hit the 80 character maximum. They're informed of that and they know that they can go back and change it to meet the requirements. Progress indicators. If these are missing from, especially from multi-page forms, people don't know where they are in the process of filling out the required information. Easy solution is just to make sure that users are kept up to date with how many steps are in the process. Make sure it's easily visible on the page. And if your business model will allow, keep the steps of a multi-page form to a minimum. Here's an example from the Body Shop. Once you hit the checkout process, you've got three options, or three form pages to go through. You've got your address page, your order options, and then your payment information. The active page that you're on is bolder. You've got a darker text here, and the circle around the 2 turns to a light green that matches the green of the website's theme. So you can know at a glance that's where you are, which is great. Best Buy also gives you a progress indicator at the top of your page. Once you go into the buying mode, you start out with your info, and this is bolder. It's got the little red triangle to denote that yes, you're at this step. As you move through, the red triangle moves with you to let you know which step that you are at currently. Error messages. This is my personal favorite. Error messages, and I've seen this time and time again in tests, they're not located close to the field that caused the error, which causes people to completely overlook them. Often they're hidden in the introductory paragraph on the form field page, and sometimes they're in red, sometimes they're not. And if they're a long sentence after even longer paragraph, they're going to get overlooked. Often these messages are vague and don't give users a way how to fix the problem. They just say, hey, you got a problem, good luck to you. They don't tell you exactly what you did to cause the problem and how you can fix it. Easy solution is place error messages next to the field that caused the error. Here's an example from Williams and Sonoma. What I did was I just hit the submit button without filling out anything. So what it bumped back to me was it's reminding me of the required field by having the red asterisk on the required field label. And it's also making that label red to let me know visually that, hey, you need to come back and fill this information out. Users might overlook this sentence, you're missing some required shipping information. Please re-enter your shipping information, just because it's preceded by 2 slightly big paragraphs on the page. And they're really just concerned at this point with filling out the form so they can get their item from Williams and Sonoma. One thing that I think helps is that the evening phone and the confirm email are not red. They're actually still gray, the original color of the form fields, which that helps to pop the red out on the page. So I think if evening phone and confirm email were red as well, I think the red text here would lose some of its punch, because it would just be every field is red. Is that different? You know, as a user, I would be thinking, is this different from the normal state of the fields? Also, include instructional text to tell them how to resolve their error. Here's an example from Express. They've got a very explicit instruction here. Please enter a first name. It's by the first name field. It's hard to miss that. You've got your overall error messages. Please check the errors highlighted below. This might get overlooked, but if it does, you still can come down here to get a very distinct instruction on how to fix the problem. What I would have rather have seen on the Express site here is to have this error message next to the field instead of underneath it. But since it does say first name, you can correspond that with the label of the field up above, so it's not too bad. So in review, field labels should align with corresponding field. Terms should be descriptive yet clear and concise. Make sure that you group items logically and use headers and spacing to set each group of form fields apart. This is especially important on forms that are on one page that may be long. Inform users of field requirements. Indicate required fields and use form validation, if applicable, before users click the submit button. The most frustrating things that I have seen from people is when they hit the submit button and then the form gets kicked back to them and they don't know why. Especially if all the form fields are suddenly cleared. They get very frustrated and they're not informed of what happened. Make sure you use radio buttons and checkboxes appropriately. Again, with the multi-page forms, ensure that the steps in the process are easily visible and users can easily distinguish the active step from the other steps that they haven't gotten to yet or have already done. Any error messages should be placed near the form field which created the error, and let users know how to resolve the error. Don't just clear the form and display the form again with all the fields cleared and leave it up to the user to decide what happened. Inform them of what happened. Well, thanks so much for listening to the presentation today, and if you have any additional questions or information that you'd like to share with us, you can contact Tom Cherry. His contact information is here on the page, and I sure do thank you for listening today. Thanks so much.